How do you build a network, run a profitable business, and make an impact? Oh, and have a personal life at the same time? That's the question, and this podcast is the answer. I'm your host, Chaz Wilson, husband, father of five, author of the book 5+1, president and co-founder of Master Networks Inc., a national networking organization. Look, each week I bring you successful entrepreneurs who will share success strategies of how to effectively build a network, add valuable wisdom to your journey, and help you succeed. Welcome to Connect, Share, and Prosper.
All right, everybody, welcome to Connect, Share, Prosper. I am super excited for this episode. I believe it's episode 51 of Connect, Share, Prosper, and I'm super excited today because for those of you following and have been listening and know that Connect is coming up, we're privileged today to have one of our keynote speakers, somebody which I'll tell the story in a second, but I was super excited to have be part of Connect. And so welcome Carrie Wilkerson to Connect, Share, Prosper.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yes, so excited. So we want to hear so much about who you are, what you're doing, how you're building your tribe. So give a little sneak peek there of what some of the things I want to talk about. But for our listeners, I want to tell you about how I first learned of you, Carrie. And I don't know if I've ever shared, like we haven't had a lot of time, so this will be kind of fun. Our audience will get to see us kind of discover some things together. So
okay.
Kind of fun. But I became aware of you with this right here.
Woohoo!
Yes. I was asking Sarah, who's worked with me for 7 years. I said, do you remember when I got this? What year was it? Because I think you wrote this in 2011?
11, uh-huh.
Yeah, which is the same year we launched Master Networks, 2011. And I read your book and was so impressed with it. And so you've kind of been on my radar for quite some time. And so I want to learn about this and how this came about. But before we get to all that, what I want to know is who is Carrie Wilkerson before you were Carrie Wilkerson, if you know what I mean? Like, before everyone knows, Carrie Wilkerson takes the stage, like.
Right, who was I before that?
Yeah.
Yeah, the truth is I was really the same girl. I mean, and after the book, I'm the same girl. I'm sitting here legit barefoot in my home office in Texas. We're both in Texas. Having my coffee, working with my laptop, and that's who I have been for about almost 22 years now.
Wow.
So I was a high school teacher and I loved it and I was really good at it, if I do say so myself. I worked in the private sector, the public sector. I've always had a lot of hustle. And when I was a high school teacher, I was in charge of the yearbook and the inner city school. And so we didn't have any budget whatsoever. And part of our job as a teacher in that realm was I had to also be our own marketing department because the yearbook pays for the yearbook. And most people don't know this, but that's a 6-figure project. I know as parents, we get irritated with the $50 here and the $50 here. But as the yearbook teacher, I mean, that's how we paid for the production of the yearbook. So inner city school kids weren't super connected, high transient rate. It was not delivered till fall. So I had to turn into a marketer, not just a teacher. And the short story is I increased sales by 325%. I left that school with a budget, inner city school with an overflow of 65 grand left over for the next year. And I digitized their lab. And this was in 97 or 98. So they were the first school in Arlington, Texas. Even we were ahead of the affluent schools in being digitized and all those things because of marketing. And my husband said this to me, guys, you always need to be listening for prophetic words, right? And my husband said to me, you are so good at making money for other people. Why don't you just make us some?
Yeah.
He said, you have such a business brain. So we adopted 2 kids like that, siblings from the foster care system. And that's what he said. They need me at home more than I need to be working. However, we still need a paycheck. This is all in my book. We need a paycheck. So I created a business from home. So I'm basically still the same girl, getting my coffee, checking into my laptop,
Love it.
hustling at home so that I can be here for my kids. And 21 years and 4 kids later, I'm still the same girl. And you know this, I'm the same on stage as I am off stage, as I am in the neighborhood. I mean, I am just me. There has not been any huge change of who was she then, who is she now. I really believe that's the core of authentic business, is just being your brand, being who you are. And so that's,
I think, Carrie, by the way, I think that's what, for me, and I know for Corey, when we met you, I think that was the thing really attractive for us when we do business with people, when we connect with people, is we've had both, like, and I know you've seen it too, right? There's the stage presence. I mean, listen, you get on stage, I think it was hard for me when I first learned and I watched masters at this, like, yeah, your storytelling, maybe you're a little more exaggerated at times, as you tell a story, but they're the same person. It's the same person. And that's what we really were like, wow, we are really excited about what you're doing and the mission you're on because of that same feeling. But you just told the story. There's like so much to unpack from that, but I loved. So do you think that's where does the entrepreneurial thing for you come from? Like, cause you're running a yearbook and being like an entrepreneur, an intro.
Yeah, when I started that job teaching, I didn't know how much entrepreneur was in that job, but I was a military kid. My dad was 27 years in the Coast Guard, and then I was a minister's kid. So when he retired, he then went into the pastorate. So both very high-paying professions, right? So
right.
I grew up in a family of not much.
Yeah.
There was always more month than money. And so really where my hustle comes from is that I was a fundraiser early on. If I was going to go on school trips, if I was going to put gas in the car, if I was going to do things, I really did have to work for it. But because I was so involved in the arts, I'm a trained musician and actress. And so if I was going to be able to do all that stuff at school and after school, I had to have a job that kind of worked around that. Because we're a faith-based family, I was not allowed to work on Sundays. So I had to seek out jobs that let me schedule a little differently. But then I also discovered jobs that paid you for your effort instead of your hours. And I made a very intentional decision, even as a teenager, on what I was willing to do and what I wasn't willing to do. And so I've hustled and fundraised and all those things earlier. So I would say my entrepreneurial spirit didn't come from saying, oh, I want to change the world, or oh, I have this big passion or this big mission. It wasn't that at all. It really was, I need to earn $200 for a ski trip. I'm the kid that my parents would say, I'm signing a permission slip for a ski trip. How are you going to pay for that? Oh, I already raised the money for that. I sold, 700 candy bars. We're good.
Wow.
And my parents were like, oh, well, we didn't even know you were going. Well, I wasn't going to ask because I knew there was no money, right? Yeah. I just created it. When we adopted the kids, I didn't have a big mission or passion or purpose with a business. I really was stepping away from a teacher's salary, and we couldn't afford for me to do that. So I had to create the money. So I think we get caught up in what is my purpose and what is my passion and what is my mission and all those things. And really, I think that my mission and purpose was being a mama to those two kids from hard places. They were foster kids, and they had a rough start. So my purpose wasn't to change the world in business. It was to change their world by being available to them. And that's okay. As entrepreneurs too, it's okay if we don't have a Zuckerberg idea. It's okay if we don't even have aspirations for six figures. It's okay to just want to make 500, 700, 5,000 a month. So that's kind of my philosophy there is success on your own terms. What does that look like for you?
Yeah. So a little bit out of so you've always kind of had that because like you said, you had to create, and then you got to this place where almost out of necessity, you needed to be an entrepreneur, right? Because of so did you go from no kids to the two right away? Is that, wow. So
toddlers, 8 months old and 2 years old overnight. Legitimately overnight.
Oh my gosh, amazing.
And lots of therapy appointments, doctor's appointments during the foster process, also lots of court visits and those kind of things while you're in transition. I mean, it was full on. There's no pregnancy, there's no prep time. It was
Wow.
just like immediate. And so,
And it's not like you had other children to sort of, lay out like what to expect, right? You just, here you go.
just jumped in. Yeah.
Wow.
And
Good for
how
you.
we did it. Our biological kids came much later, 11 years later.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've also run a business, pregnant, not pregnant, adopting. My husband travels a good 85% of the time. So I've been through all these ages and stages. 21 years I've covered. I used to be young in business and not so much anymore. So I've done it all. I've been there and done that. But it really was all based out of necessity.
Oh. Yeah. So I want to ask you a question, because I know in our tribe, our master networkers, I know, and there's some that listen to this who are foster parents. They've adopted, so this is a really cool connection with I know a lot of our people who've done that. So really great hearts, and we have phenomenal people, some that will be at Connect who've done that. And so from a timing standpoint, right, you've adopted these two little ones, and you're making this transition, right at that same kind of time. What did that, like, I imagine that had to be just like exciting and scary at the same time.
I think that when we're young, so I was in my 20s then, right?
Yeah.
I think there's a phrase like, I was too dumb to doubt. I just really thought, well, why wouldn't this work? Why? Yeah. Well, of course, this is going to work. I'm just going to love them enough, or I'm just going to put enough sweat equity into it, or this is just what we're called to do. People say they have to be passionate about their idea or their business. I believe you have to be passionate about why you're doing it. And the reason why I was doing it was because of these kids, right? So, the transition was tough. It was survival most days. I was a lot heavier then. I was approximately 145 pounds heavier then. I look back at pictures and video and I go, I don't even remember that one point in my life. I was just functioning. I was surviving at some point. And there's no shame in that. There's no shame in surviving and the waking up to hit it again and the being in mud, so to speak. It can be overwhelming, but at the same time, I'm really grateful that I didn't wait. A lot of people, especially women, I'm going to say women, especially if there's another income in the house, we tend to say, I'll wait till the kids start school, or I'll wait until I feel on top of this, or you know what, if I had waited, I would still be waiting, because my oldest son, he was the oldest when we adopted, he has permanent brain damage. If I had waited, everything was okay with Mark, I would still be waiting, because he's going to be dependent on us the rest of his life, and he's now 23 years old. So if I had waited until all the kids were out of the house, I would still be waiting, because we then had two surprise biological kids, and I have an elementary school kid still. So we've got to stop waiting. We've got to say, it may not be perfect. It may not look like, what the magazines say it should be or what Chaz says it should be, but we're just going to do what we can now and function now. And I'm so glad I didn't wait. 21 years later, and a couple of books and lots of stages and, lots of great partnerships later, I'm really thrilled I didn't wait till I had it figured out, or until I had the whole mom thing figured out. Because honestly, I'm still on a day-by-day with that.
Oh, for sure. I so appreciate a couple things you shared there. So, my wife and I had twins. They were number 4 and 5. So we went from 3 to 5, and we thought, by 3, we thought, we got some things figured out, which we didn't, but we really quickly figured out we didn't when we went 5 kids in 7 years. And it was like, oh my gosh. But that first year with the twins was survival. And I think the set is really powerful, because we have a tremendous amount of mothers and single mothers, and we have a handful of single fathers that are entrepreneurs that are raising children and doing this in the struggle. And I think when you said there's no shame in the survival, really hit me, because I think there was a part of us for a while that was like, we see other people and they seem to have it together and they seem to be doing it with all these kids or whatever they were doing. And it's like, we're just like, can we get through today? Like, how are we going to get through today? Because she was back to working nights. I'm working during the day. Somebody's up with the kids all the time. Like, it was just painful. So I appreciate that statement of like, yeah, like there's no shame in that survival. There's just stages of life sometimes.
And there's no shame in not loving your business every day.
Yeah.
There's no shame in that. You don't have to love it or be passionate about it every single day. You know, if we felt that way about marriage, you know, most of us, we don't wake up every day like crazy in the honeymoon phase, right? But you make a choice to stay or not. And so, and I'm not shaming divorce. I'm absolutely not. There are, of course, 100,000 reasons that things can go wrong. But in our business, we wake up and go, oh, I'm not passionate about that today. Maybe I should sell my business. Stop it. Sometimes we just have to survive, and it's okay to just make money sometimes. And spend your emotional energy on your family and your kids, right? So I look now, a young mom said to me the other day, she brings my daughter home, my youngest home, one day a week for me. And my daughter is 11, right? So to me, she's the baby.
Right.
This family has a 3rd grader, a kindergartner, and a 4-year-old. Right. And so she's a big kid to those girls. So she was telling them about her morning routine, Lily was. And she's like, well, yeah, my alarm goes off. My alarm goes off at such and such time. And then I get up and I fix my breakfast and I pack my lunch or whatever. And this mom, she's telling me this story and she's in tears. She's like, oh, she wakes herself up and dresses herself. And I said, listen, I've been doing this 21 years. It's my turn. Right.
Yeah.
I can do this. It'll be your turn at some point, but I did all those years of all those things. I totally get it. But it was so funny to me, the perspective of she's just like, ooh, someday maybe my kids will wake themselves up, or, oh, someday I won't have to be putting their shoes and socks on them.
Yeah.
So it's okay to be surviving and just paying the bills at some point.
Isn't it?
It's okay to be pouring your energy and attention into twins and getting them to a stage. You know, I always say about kids that are really close together, because mine are 19 months apart, the older 2. Yeah. I always encourage moms when I'm out that have kids real close together. Listen, hang in there until the youngest one is about 3.5. And then the momentum kind of grows and they help each other, right? Here, let me tie your shoes. Here, oh, look, let me adjust this for you. Oh, can you help her reach the, just hang in there until the youngest one. And that's okay. There's no shame in the hanging in there in your business or in your family until we get to a new season. It doesn't mean we have to say, oh, I'm going to quit my business. It's just too much. It's too whatever. We've got it as entrepreneurs. This is a new kind of kick I'm on. We need to embrace the fact that our business can be flexible, but it should not be optional.
Oh, so good. I'm gonna write that down. Just keep going on that.
Well, let me go back and say, yes, it can be flexible. We can sometimes work in the middle of the night if we need to. We can sometimes get up early and do that if we need to. Or do a weekend if we need to. There's no shame in that. But it should not be optional. We would never say, oh, I'm just not going to parent this week, right? The kids, I'm going to get rid of the kids this week. We've got to commit to our business, even if it's flexible, even if it's mobile and movable and nimble. And it should be. In these days of entrepreneurship, it should be. We should be able to work from anywhere. I know you're on the road quite a bit. I just got back from Australia, and I tell you what, it's taken me a couple of days at my age to recover from that time zone change and 20-something hours of flying and good grief. But I still worked while I was gone. I worked differently, but I still worked because my business is flexible, not optional. Because honestly, I've never talked to the mortgage company, and my mortgage is not optional, right? The electric bill is not optional. And I will say, let me go ahead and clarify for anybody listening or watching. While I am married, I will say that for 21 years, I've been earning a full-time income. A primary breadwinner income. It has nothing to do with how much my husband earns or not, but I will say for 12 years, he worked for me. He worked at home with me and for me. So I don't want anybody to say, oh, well, that's cute. She's had this little part-time business. No, for 21 years, I've generated a full-time, what I call an executive income.
Good for you.
My brand comes from, right? The Barefoot Executive. And now we've moved into the executive income formula and the executive inner circle and all those things, because you should be able to create an executive income, but it cannot be optional. You cannot keep making your business activity optional. Just make them flexible. And that's very, very different.
So I wrote it down. And so for those listening, you're driving, go back later and write that down. I wrote down flexible, but not optional. I wrote your name next to it. So I'm gonna give you credit every time I share that, because flexible, but not optional. I think so. Like sometimes I forget I'm actually doing a podcast because I feel like you and I are just having this conversation, but
Perfect.
But what I loved, I wrote this down, and it makes me think. So many of our friends listening to this struggle with whether it be guilt, shame. They need, like you said, don't wait. They need permission to move, and it's like no one's coming to give you that permission. No one's coming to save you from any of this. Who's going to give you that permission anyway? And so I love that you're just like just started and over 21 years. So. Like this program, our tribe, we celebrate people who are successful. And I think, unfortunately, there's groups out there that will look at you and be, they're going to give every reason why that's not a good thing, or shame on you for doing certain things. I mean, I just had a conversation. This is why I think what you just said is so powerful, especially like I just have this thing where I love the fight of business, right? The grind of it. And we have some amazing people. And I met this mother who is in the balance of where you were. And we're going to get to what you're doing now. But what I loved is she's moving from full-time career to this business world, right? And she has this book, and she's telling me about this book she wants to write, but she wants to wait till her kids are a little older. And I said, I mean, that's your choice. You can totally do that. But I said, what would it be like if they actually saw their mother write the book, go through all of this? And that's the legacy in the story you're telling, not like I had to wait through this. And I think it's such a powerful thing you're sharing. And like, this isn't optional. You could be flexible on this, but it is not optional. I love that. Love it. Love it.
Yeah. We're in an age and a culture where we're celebrating the woman, right? And we're celebrating diversity and all these things. And yet sometimes our biggest enemy in that celebration is ourselves. But here's what I know. And like I said, I started this business to earn a salary. So I could go home. I didn't start to be a champion. I didn't start to be a role model. I had no idea at that point I would have 3 girls and 1 boy. But what I will say is my girls see no limits.
Yes.
My girls are like, well, yeah, why wouldn't I be able to do something at home and raise kids and whatever mom does, right? Or my kids, their friends would be like, well, your mom stays at home with you, right? Well, yeah, she does. So they won't necessarily like dwell on the business. But then yesterday, now this is kind of funny, I just got verified on Instagram.
Yes.
And so yesterday in one of my daughters, my freshman in high school, her geometry class, one of her friends like hijacked the overhead projector and put my profile up, and they're like, did y'all know that Katie's mom is legit?
Oh,
she has legit.
So good.
Hysterical. So my kids have this tremendous pride in me.
Yes.
And my kids are like, well, of course you can do that. You can do anything. Well, of course my mom's in Australia. She'll say, she'll say, oh, I can't this week. I can't this week because my mom's in Australia. So blah, blah, blah. And her friends are like, wait, what? What's your mom? What's she doing? Yeah, she's in Australia this week. She'll be back in a few days. Right. So my kids see my kids meet other entrepreneurial men and women, people of every color, shape, size, background, age. And they go, well, of course that's possible. And so how do I even quantify that financially? I just go, I have blown every limit for my girls. They don't see any limitations, any boxes, any ceilings. Is that part of your why? It is now. Yeah. That's the other thing I want people to hear is what your why is right now might be different in 2 years or 3 years. My why has evolved 4 or 5 times, and there's no shame in that either. It should evolve. It should change. My why was being home with preschool kids. And then my why became retiring my husband from a volatile career where he was. So he actually was home with us until the youngest went into 1st grade. He was home during that early childhood stage for all 4 of our kids. What other kids get to say that about their dad? He was on PTA. He was the field trip dad. He was that guy. My kids have such a great, strong, and I had no idea when I started a business that would ever be possible, right? I just wanted to earn like $800 a month. So your why should evolve and your why should change. And my why now is, yes, role modeling for girls is powerful, is strong for other women. Yes, because if I can influence mamas, I get to influence the whole family, right?
Good.
That's strong. If you influence the family, then you're changing neighborhoods and you're changing the polls and you're changing the world, honestly. So would I have ever said I was a world changer? No, I just wanted to change my house, right? But now my why has grown. Yeah, so of course, oh, people write books. That's what they do. Oh, people stand on stages. Oh, people, do whatever. Yeah. Of course, my mom knows a mountain climber. Of course, she knows somebody that flies a fighter jet, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Because they just really don't see any limits. And they also don't see that you have to wait to have it. So I think as women and moms, we have to stop thinking that building a business is that something for us or a luxury for us. It really can be very strong and powerful for your kids, not only to give them options in what you are able to afford, but also to role model for them what they can achieve and how they can create their life too. I mean, don't wait. Do now. Study with them in your lap. Work with them, next to you. There's no shame. They're going to need therapy anyway. No matter what we do, they're going to need therapy anyway. We're going to mess them up no matter what. So we might as well also be pursuing this at the same time. Stop waiting. Because
I love this.
At the speed that business changes and at the speed that culture changes, everything will look radically different in 3 or 4 years. Anyway. So when I started my business, this was not even possible. This was very still Jetsons, like the thought that we could do video conferencing affordably. I started my business with dial-up internet, if you can even believe, right?
Yeah, right.
And so things change, so stop waiting. And this is where the tough love comes in.
Yeah.
If you really have a message or a solution, or you can help other people, why would you be selfish and keep that to yourself?
So good.
Stop it. Stop that mess. I mean, just help other people, even one at a time. You don't have to be a millionaire. You can help one person at a time. You can fix one thing at a time. There's case study after case study after case study about that. We've got to stop waiting and thinking this is a luxury. You could really be solving some amazing things for people. And in my case, with my special needs son, we had no idea when I started my business that he had special needs. And so as that evolved and grew, we had no idea that at some point that would be $5,000 a month in tuition and therapy and treatments and those kind of things. So how many people watching or listening could just pick up a $5,000 a month option and say, this is what we need to do for his safest and best life? That's most people's salary, right? After taxes and interest and all that salary. But because we were in business, we were able to say, okay, what does this make possible? How do we create this? And if I had talked myself out of being in business until the kids were older, he would not have had some of the same opportunities for improvement and enrichment in his best life that he's had. So,
wow, so amazing. Like, I feel like this podcast is probably going to be a 2-part series because I asked you like a third of the questions I was going to ask you yet. So, I feel like do you feel like you've used the word create several times, where like, I think that's the thing entrepreneurs do is they create, like they look at the problem and they go, how do I create a solution versus who's going to come help me figure this out. Right. And so amazing. All the things you've accomplished in that, like just really powerful. And I love that you're legitimately Instagram verified, that your daughter like is proud of that. My son this weekend, one of my little twins, I heard my voice playing upstairs and I walked up there and he was watching our YouTube channel and he was listening to stuff. And now his big kick is he thinks what I do is I'm a YouTuber just because he found me on YouTube. Right. So
you are.
Yeah. Be a YouTuber like you. No, son, that's like, go for it. But that's not what I'm doing. Right. So
except that you kind of are, right?
I know, but
so the 11-year-old, there'll be a conversation in class and somebody will say, does anybody know anybody famous? Or do you know anybody blah, blah, blah. And my daughter always is like, your mom's not famous. Google her. Google me.
Yeah, right.
And they can Google her and find me. And then they're like, she has a book. She has a whatever. My kids are like, yeah, that's just what we do. That's what our people do, right?
I love it. I love it. So good.
We're just online. We're just verified. People listen to my mom, And if you really want to blow their mind, take them with you when you go speak somewhere and let them watch other people listen to you. Whether it's 50 people in a room or 100 people in a room, or in my case, 15,000 in a room, having people listen to your mom, like there's a whole different kind of credibility in that. They're like, oh my gosh, Mom, those people, they were hanging on to everything that you said. They were taking your advice. They were taking notes. I'm like, yeah, and I can't even get you to pick up your room, right? So
I'm only like, if people they're not watching, they're only listening. Like you could imagine my face of this. Like I relate to that statement more than, like my son thinks, Dad, you don't know anything. And I'm like, there are people that pay me for my advice, son. Like, just listen to what I'm saying. It's that kind of thing. I remember the first Connect, you're talking about this, like the first Connect, my wife came backstage before I was getting ready to speak. And people don't know this about me. Very few people know this, that like, I was a very shy kid. Like I'm still a little bit terrified to do this.
Okay.
Not optional. Like you just said, it's not optional. So she came backstage to kind of like, you got this kind of thing for the first Connect 4 years ago. And that was really before I started speaking quite a bit. And I said to her, because I knew this was going to happen, I said, where are you guys going to be sitting? And she said, well, we have the front row, like right there. So I'm like, okay. In my mind, I'm thinking, do not make eye contact in the front row. Like, don't do it because my kids are at Connect.
Yeah.
Here, right? So I walk on stage and I'm like, look directly to the back. And somehow they moved. They're on the back row now, right in the middle. And I see my little boy who's now 11 and at the time, 7, and he's in the back like, mess. And like, I started to get choked up and I realized at this moment, and this is what I hear you saying, and I wrote this down. Like, I realized that I don't have to tell my kids about what I do. I'm doing it with them. Like they get to see this thing. And so for all the entrepreneurs listening, like it doesn't have to be a choice of either or. And I think that for a long time, the professional world was that way.
Right. And business is business, and you don't bring home your work, and you don't talk about it. Like your dad disappears every day between 8 and 5, and you never know what he does, whereas my kids now will say, hey, Mom, we need summer jobs, but we want to start with you. What have you got? How can we serve in your business? Because that way we can work our own hours and we can work at home and we can help you create for the family business. That's huge. The fact that my kid's not saying, oh, I'm going to go work at Wendy's, right? Because that's going to cut into her tap lessons or her vocal lessons. She's saying, Mom, can I help you create Instagram images? Can I learn video editing? Can I whatever? So my kids are learning how to create income, that it's not a finite resource. It's an infinite resource, and they have the availability of turning it off and turning it on within their own skill set. So it's really powerful, moms and dads. I mean, stop waiting, because there's a lot of university you can be while you're modeling your business. Master's level,
right at the home. Like, what a great thing. This is why I think you're a great human, Carrie. I just think you're a great person. So let's transition a little bit. Let's tell the audience a little bit about what you're doing right now. I know this is one of the books, Barefoot Executive, and while you're getting that kind of prepped in your mind, I want to tell everyone how this came about, because this is a powerful skill. It's a lost skill. Speaking of teaching our kids, this to me is a lost skill of networking and connecting with people and building a network of people. But I do this thing, and the great Chet Holmes taught this about the Dream 100 is what he called it.
Yep.
Building out a list of people. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but
ultimate sales machine.
Ultimate sales machine, right? So, and a lot of people have taken it, Dana Derricks, Russell Brunson, a lot of people have taken this to a different level now, but like, it's something I've used for a long time. And what's interesting is I always make this list of people. Like I read a book and I'm like, man, that really connected with me. I write their name down, and I have, in my office over here on the back of the door, I have those big stickies, and I have just lists of people. And sometimes those names will sit there for 2 or 3 years and they don't really do anything, but I just physically put their names on a list. And I may have shared this with you, but your name's been on that list for a while. Like just something like at some point, I hope our lives cross and that kind of thing. Right. And this happens to me. I am not a very like foo like thing, and like how things, like I'm very strategic and analytical. And so your name's on there, and we get invited to a business conference, and we go the first day. It was okay. And we left that afternoon because we weren't really feeling a lot from the speakers. And as we're leaving, I look at the agenda for the next day. And you, I believe, were the last speaker, the last keynote. And I said, yes, or, you know, so, and I'm watching, and I'm looking at this. I said, Corey, my COO, I said, Corey, that's Carrie Wilkerson. And he didn't make the connection of what I meant. And I was like, she's been on my list for.
She's on the door.
Yeah, she's like on the door. It's like years, and she's going to be here speaking. And I'm like, I just like, we're going to come back. And so we came back, and I was standing in the back of the room, just stretching. And like, I was just struggling to connect with some of the things going on. And so I was in the back, and you walked in the back, and we just, I know you're getting ready to speak. I do that too. So I didn't want to like, mess anything that was, you're getting in your space. And so I just introduced myself. And then I said to Corey, the room was kind of like the numbers had kind of dwindled. And I said, Corey, I kind of feel bad. So like, we're going to be those people that I look for. We're going to go sit in the front. We're going to laugh at every joke. We're going to smile. We're going to like give you that energy. And then your plane got delayed and all that. So because you were back to vacation, and we were able to connect. And I just tell the audience this because I want my Master Networks people, and those listening may not be familiar, or people that are listening because they know you. Like, I don't know how that all worked. I really don't. Like, your name's been there for a while, and you've just been like I said, this book's been on my shelf. I've read it a couple of times. Like, that just happened. Like, it came together, and now you're speaking at our event, and it's.
Yeah, it did just happen. However, you did introduce yourself, and that's where a lot of people would have short. They would not have introduced themselves. And so I'll even go one step further, because I do remember that. I remember walking into that room and going, oh, these numbers are not what they said these numbers were going to be. The energy in here is insane. The longer version of the story is that it basically was in my backyard. It was within an hour of the class. So I accepted this speech, and I even negotiated for a lower fee because I thought, oh, it's summertime. I'll just drive over and drive back. And then we booked a family vacation over the top of it because somehow it wasn't on the calendar. So I'm on family vacation, and I have to fly back into my own town to speak. And then there was flooding. And I don't know if I even ever told you this, but my Uber, when I got back, my Uber like flooded. I'm in an Uber with water up to my waist. I mean, it was just insanity. But the difference is, I walk in the room and I'm like, why am I even here? What is even happening? This audience is dead and done. They are so over being here for 3 days. Those are just some of the things. And I said, but that's okay. I'm still going to do my best. Anyway, you walk in and introduce yourself. And here's what you said. No pressure here. We came just to hear you. I'm like, oh, great. Awesome. There's like 50 people here, and everybody is on their laptop and done. Yeah. And that's the energy of the room. And so then you guys moved up front, and I'm like, oh, dang it. Okay, so now they're on the front row. They're at the first table. It's okay. It's all right. We're just going to, I'll speak to just them if I need to. So that's what happened, is you have to step out of your comfort zone. You have to introduce yourself. You have to say, hey, read your book. And I tell you, as an author, we never get tired of hearing that. That always still is so honoring when somebody says, oh my gosh, I read your book, or oh my gosh, I followed your work, or, I'm a parent too, and what you said really resonated with me. I mean, that never gets old. And so you have to reach out and connect. I have a same list. I read Chet Holmes. Matter of fact, Chet Holmes was on my list, and he adopted me on Twitter before he died. Wow. And he was mentoring me from afar. And so he was on my list. Anthony Robbins, John Maxwell, who I have a video of John Maxwell saying Carrie is one of the most effective speakers I've ever heard. She talks with an audience, not at an audience. How do things like that happen? It's because we're intentional, and you first have to put it down, and then you have to look at it, and then you have to make those things happen. So intentional networking is a strong, powerful skill. It's how you date. It's how you build friendships. It's how you build business relationships. And because other people will not do it, it automatically makes you stand out. So a lot of the amazing things that have happened in my life, speaking with Zig Ziglar and him endorsing my book, and some of those greats. Yeah. It's because I called and said, I have a crazy idea. Here's how your work has impacted my life since I was in 7th grade. I would love to come in and meet you. Absolutely. You were on our list to connect with. Would you come in and do a simulcast? Yeah. So the Ziglars and I are very close now. The Maxwell Company, I helped them with the launch. Because of that launch that I helped them with, when I was in Australia, somebody said, hey, I heard you helped with such and such. Is that the case? Absolutely. Yeah. Would you be willing to help us with it? In Australia, I'm like, I'm this barefoot, small town, kid. And in Australia, they know my name. I mean, it's
So
a little
cool.
bizarre, but it's because of relationship and connection. And I was just a mom who just needed to make some extra money, right? So that's the difference in flexible and optional. My business is flexible, but it's not optional. And so I've also stepped into some uncomfortable places, being willing to stretch and grow and introduce myself to people, risking them going, so what? Who cares who you are, right? But it's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay,
Right.
because you never know unless you ask.
And I'm just gonna add one other thing, and I want to ask you a question. So I do find, though, and you probably found this to be true, that a lot of these people that, and it took me a while to figure this out, but a lot of the people who have written books or speak on stages, most of them, I would say 90% of them, like, are very approachable. And I always had this in my mind, like, I can't talk to these people, or I'm just somebody else or whatever. And like, most of them are just real people doing real things, trying to make a real impact. And if people don't connect with them, they can't make the impact they want to make.
Right. I would say this. I would say that I have this rare quality that I don't get starstruck. I don't get starstruck because I recognize people are just people, right?
Yes.
They're dealing with the same hormones. They're dealing with the same kid issues.
Yes.
They're dealing with, I mean, if anything brings that to light, this whole scandal, this whole college scandal of people paying to get their kids into school, they are struggling with feeling like their kids aren't good enough or inadequate or whatever. They're all struggling with the same things we are. And just like with John Maxwell, I don't get starstruck. I can respect somebody's body of work. I can respect what they've done, but to be starstruck is unfair to people. And that's when people start to let you down. When you put them on this crazy pedestal, we are just humans. Please say hello. Now, if I'm at an event and I'm speaking and I'm rushing from place to place, I might have to say, I'm sorry, I can't visit right now. Please stop me at lunch, or please, but it doesn't mean I'm being a diva. It really does mean I'm either having to preserve my voice or my energy or whatever. But I
totally get it.
I have found that some of the biggest names are the most approachable and the most open to talking about their work. The ones, it's almost like old money versus new money, right? The people that are genuinely wealthy are people that don't have money hangups. The people that are so busy proving that they can afford things, just like experts that are trying to prove their expertise, those tend to be the most diva-ish or unapproachable because they're trying to create a persona. So I'm not saying there aren't some of those people. There are some of those people who are very different on stage and off stage and very different, very unapproachable. But the majority of people are just humans, and they love that you honor their work. They love that you respect. And if you quote, now don't BS them. Don't say, oh, I love your work, when you don't have anything, you don't know anything about your work.
right.
You say, oh my gosh, that story in your book about blah, blah, blah. Or, oh, the thing I always quote you saying is blah, blah, blah. Or, I read this at a really hard time, or this encouraged me to XYZ, or I think it's so funny that you say this. We never get tired of that because that validates our work. It doesn't, so that being said, don't be afraid to connect. Humans are just humans, and we're all longing for connection on some level.
Well, connection feels natural with you. Like, I think that's what makes you a great business person, because you make it feel like you're just that natural, even though I know you've worked at it. So let's kind of wrap with this. Tell everyone what you're up to, what you're working on. How can our audience connect with you? How can we support the mission you're out there doing? Like, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I would say, when you say connection is natural, maybe I have an advantage because my dad was military. So I had to move a lot, and I had to make myself relevant quickly. I had to build relationships quickly and often. And then as a preacher's kid, I was kind of always making sure everybody was happy and meeting the people that came in and watching my dad, who was very shy by nature, speak on stage every week, multiple times a week, and connecting and caring about people. So maybe that's my advantage, is that that was a skill set I had to create. Also, as being obese for so much of my life, I had to be personable, I would say, to compensate for anything image-wise that people were judging me about. But what I will say is that if you just listen to people or show people that you care, there's automatic connection there. It's not rocket science. But I kind of appointed myself as a big sister in business. You know, I'm going to fuss at you a little. I'm going to encourage you a lot. I'm going to, you know, make you own your mess, and then teach you what I've learned. I'm not going to teach you philosophy or what I haven't done, but I'm also in the trenches doing it too. So that's part of probably my secret in connecting, is that I don't think I'm better than everybody else. I just know that I'm an average next door, you know, girl that walks out to get my mail in my robe sometimes like everybody else does, right? Right. What I'm up to now, that's an interesting question. So I am, The Barefoot Executive is a brand and was the first book. We've kind of evolved beyond that. We do still have the executive brand, so everything is now kind of rebranded. Carrie Wilkerson is the overarching brand because I'm speaking so much now. I am working on, because of my son's brain damage and because of Alzheimer's in our family and my fascination with brain research, we are incorporating neuroscience into what we talk about and do now. The why behind your why, the why you're wired, the wiring behind changing your habits, the wiring behind why I connect so naturally and other people struggle with that. So I am incorporating like actual science into personal development, which is kind of cool. And I'm excited about that. How to leverage your own personal neuroscience as well as the neuroscience of the people that you work with into leadership and influence. So we're moving into a leadership space, a leadership and influence space. And that's kind of exciting, and a whole different level of credibility there with that. So the next book has some neuroscience behind it. It's why it's taken longer to come out, because when I got ready to release it, I went, it still needs something. And it was science. I wanted to put the brain behind the heart too. So I'm pretty excited about that. I'm working on that. I'm also working at connecting, you know, my clients with a monthly program that we're doing now, where we're actually mailing out books every month, like mini books for implementation in their business. So digestible implementation and tactics in their business. We're going back to hard mail. We're going back to like physical instead of just online. Yes, online and that model of learning is very important, but we also need to not overlook the tactical and the tangible. And so I'm working on rolling that out right now as well. And as I just mentioned, I just got back from Australia, and I was actually there to attend a workshop. Like I was going to be totally on the down low and incognito and learning. And that didn't work. There were people in the room that had read my book. Now, this was kind of interesting. There was only 20 people at this workshop. It was a very intimate workshop. And there were, you know, approximately 15% of the room was like, are you the same Carrie Wilkerson that wrote the book? And then there was somebody else that said, oh, I saw you speak in the Philippines. Like, how random is that? I saw you speak in the Philippines 2 years ago. Yeah. And so it really is kind of amazing. But that being said, the people hosting the workshop, they're on to me now, and they're like, oh, you did such and such for so-and-so. Would you help us launch that? So I do some consulting on the side in addition to what I do with end users. It's important to me not to be a guru or thought leader that's just leading from behind the typewriter. I like to keep my hands in the bread dough, so to speak. I like to stay in the lab and keep doing as well as teaching, because that's where I stay on top of things. So I've not moved to just researcher. I am actually still a practitioner as well. So I have a lot of those things In addition to one of my adopted kids, she graduates from university in May, which is very exciting. And and then I have a high schooler and also at elementary. So when I say I'm a full-time mom in the trenches, I absolutely am. I do not have a full-time staff. I have somebody that helps me pick them up in the afternoons, and that's about it for staff. So I am a full-time mom. It's my best and fullest career and the most fulfilling. But I do a couple of other things too. I do, some of that income earning too.
Just a few.
It's flexible, but it's not optional. So, but I will say, here's one thing that I've done for this year. I think it's really important to see what's working, what's not working. Last year, I did a lot of weekend speaking. I did a couple of tours. And the reason I did that was because my husband travels during the week. So logistically, it made a lot of sense. Right? We could tag team and do that. And I still felt like it was too much. So this year I reworked my contracts that if I have to be gone on the weekend, if somebody wants to hire me for a weekend speaking gig, now you guys are obviously an exception because you're local, but if somebody calls me away for the weekend, it's now 2 plane tickets and it's now double expenses because I'm taking at least one member of my family.
I love that.
So that's actually in the contract for this year. So what I would say to the moms and the dads is that is the power of being your own CEO, is you get to say, this is what that looks like. I did not love being away. So how can I intentionally put in some kid time? How can I intentionally schedule a weekend away with my husband? And that means extra plane tickets. And here's what has happened. Now in negotiating that, when they say, hey, what will it take for us to get you, blah, blah, blah. Now in the conversation I say, that's 2 plane tickets and that's, 2 sets of meals, etc. Because when I'm required to speak on the weekend, I always take a family member with me so that I can honor my values and my priorities. I have not had 1 ounce of pushback. Here's what they say.
I believe it.
Oh my gosh, we love that you practice what you preach. Oh, wow, that is so meaningful. And can we make sure and introduce your family on stage? Can we integrate?
That's so good.
They love it. And so I think sometimes we have this fear of, oh, if I put that in place, I'm not going to be as in demand or whatever. Listen, you have to honor your priorities and your values first. And I think that's what makes you attractive to people. That's what makes people say, oh my gosh, she's a mom just like me. Oh, look at her kids. Her kids really do exist and not just on Instagram, right? And so it's a powerful classroom for them as well. But it really does show your audiences that you mean what you say and you say what you mean. So that's kind of what we're up to this year. We have some really aggressive goals for the next few years. I will be 50 in the next few years. And so we did just have a family meeting and we set some really aggressive financial as well as milestone goals because that's the freshman graduates and wants to go study in New York. So we want to, I say semi-retire, but my husband laughs and he said, your semi-retired is like everybody else's full-time. Who are you? Yeah. So we're just looking at having some options. And again, when you work for somebody else, you don't get to say, oh, I have some really aggressive income goals for the next 3 years. You can only do that if you are in charge of your own results and your own effort. So we're looking at a few-year sprint on some things, and so that's very exciting. So anyway, we're speaking. I do a maximum of like 2 speaking gigs a month because I don't like to be gone. And then we're working on the membership program, and then working on the next book, incorporating some brain stuff in there, some neuroscience behind the personal development. So we're very excited about all those things.
Well, you'll have to keep us in the loop as that stuff comes out so we can, let our audience know, our Master Network family. And so guys, if you're listening, go find Carrie, CarrieWilkerson.com. That's your website?
CarrieWilkerson.com. Also on Facebook, I'm Carrie Wilkerson. On Instagram, I'm Carrie Wilkerson. I have my username across all platforms. So I'm super easy to find. And my kids say you can just Google me. So go just Google me. And
just Google her. You'll find her. And come to Connect and meet Carrie.
Come meet me. Very exciting. I'll probably have one of my kids there with me.
Oh, so great. Please do. And I wish I could tell you what we're going to announce at Connect. I'll have to tell you privately because I can't let it out of the bag. And this is going to be shared prior to Connect, but it has to do with kids. So it's super cool. But thank you, Carrie. I'm super honored that you would be on our show. And we're going to turn this into a 2-part because there's just so much value here.
Yeah.
Spend a lot of time, but just really appreciate you and the impact you're making. And guys, this is the power of connecting. This is the power of relationships, is meeting amazing people. There's so many amazing humans. And maybe because we hesitate, we're shy, we get in our own head, we get in our own way. We got to get over that, get over ourselves to just get in front of people and introduce yourself. Say hello, smile, say hello. You're only one relationship away from changing your future, and that relationship could be closer than you think.
Absolutely, 100%.
Carrie, thank you so much. Thank you for being part of the show. Guys, until next time, connect, share, and prosper.